Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is John Nori, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar and activities. If you have technical problems, the information on the screen now will be very important to you. You'll need that webinar ID at the bottom of the screen, 812-320-547, and you can call the toll-free number that's listed above, 855-352-9002. If you're tweeting, we'd like you to use hashtag NASSP webinar, and our location, of course, is at NASSP. We're on Facebook, and the website rather for NASSP is nassp.org/webinar. And someone has already asked a question: will today's webinar be available for review and reference afterwards? And the answer is yes. It'll be at that nassp.org/webinar site within 48 hours. If you need a certificate of attendance, or you would like to have one, you can go to the site listed at the bottom of your screen and get that at your convenience. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker today. You're lucky enough to have a two-part presentation. Today's presentation begins with a message from FRAC. There we go. And our presenter is Allison Maurice. Allison is a child nutrition policy analyst at FRAC. Allison, are you with me?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm going to give you control of the slides, and you can go ahead and begin.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi there. My name is Allison Maurice, and as you said, I work at the Food Research and Action Center. Hold on, I'm having trouble getting my slide to move forward.
Okay, I'll move it for you, and then I'll try again to give it to you.
Thank you.
Okay,
so a little background on FRAC, if you aren't familiar with us. We are a nonprofit and nonpartisan agency, and we work to improve public policies and public and private partnerships to eradicate hunger and undernutrition in the United States. And we do this through doing research, policy analysis. We give out a lot of grants. We provide technical assistance directly to schools and school districts and other state agencies, and we also lobby Congress. Next slide. Okay, so you all might be wondering, what does eating have to do with academic success? So I know you all are here on the webinar today to find out how can we make this transition from 8th grade to high school easier on students. And FRAC would argue that part of that is by providing a healthy meal at the start of the school day. So making sure every child has eaten a healthy breakfast is an important but often overlooked tool to boost academic performance. Children who skip breakfast are less able to master the tasks necessary to do well in school. Children who live in families that experience hunger have lower math scores and an increased likelihood of repeating a grade. Whereas children who eat breakfast at school closer to class and test-taking time actually perform better on standardized tests than those who skip breakfast or even eat breakfast at home. Additionally, our research has found that children who have eaten breakfast at school are less likely to cause distractions due to behavioral and disciplinary issues. Teenagers experiencing hunger are more likely to be suspended from school and have difficulty getting along with other students. Students who participate in school breakfast exhibit decreased behavioral and psychological problems and have lower rates of absence and tardiness. And additionally, providing students with breakfast in the classroom after the start of the school day is actually associated with fewer disciplinary office referrals. And you can see at the bottom of the PowerPoint slide is a resource. This is FRAC's Breakfast for Learning research brief, and it gives a great overview of the benefits of eating school breakfast and its association with academic achievement. So every year, FRAC puts out an annual school breakfast scorecard, and it looks at school breakfast participation nationally and state by state. And we look at free and reduced price school breakfast participation to determine how many low-income students school breakfast is reaching nationally and in each state. And we use a ratio of free and reduced price lunch participation as a benchmark. There's already broad participation in the lunch program by low-income students, so this is a useful comparison for us to measure how many students could and should be benefiting from school breakfast each day. Second, we compare the number of schools offering the school breakfast program to the number of schools operating the National School Lunch Program, as this is an important indicator of access to the program for low-income children. Currently, 92.2% of schools that serve lunch also serve breakfast. So that means that this program is available to students, yet still 56 low-income children participated in school breakfast for every 100 that participated in school lunch. Anecdotally, school breakfast participation is even lower among secondary school students. And you can see at the bottom of the slide is a link to our report, and you can check out how your state measures up and how well your breakfast participation is. So what are some of the barriers to breakfast participation? So traditionally, school breakfast is offered before the start of the school day, and that means students have to arrive early to benefit from this program, and that means it's competing with late arrivals due to school bus schedules, rushed morning schedules, and in general, we know that our secondary students like to sleep in as late as possible and therefore show up to school as late as possible. And then also that parents are only kind of vaguely aware that this program actually even exists. Additionally, that 30-cent copayment for reduced price breakfast can still be a problem for struggling families. But I think what is also really important to think about for our older students is that this program has historically been associated as being only for poor kids. And so we really want to do what we can to detach that stigma from school breakfast, because we want our children to be accessing food if they're hungry, and we don't want them avoiding it because they're afraid of what their friends might think. So, let's see, next slide. Oh, there we go. So we've come up with some best practices for creating a breakfast model that fits the average student. And we found that offering breakfast after the start of the school day has been really helpful in increasing participation. So there's three different models that we tend to use, and the first is the breakfast in the classroom. Meals are delivered directly to the classroom to be eaten at the start of the day. It becomes part of the routine. It's just like taking attendance or handing in homework. And then the two models, grab and go and second chance breakfast, are two models that work particularly well with older students because they can just easily grab the components of their school breakfast from a cart or kiosk in a good location at the school and then be on their way to wherever else they might be. Many middle and high school students aren't hungry first thing in the morning, so serving them breakfast after first period allows them ample time to arrive to class, to socialize before school, and then once they're a little bit more settled, they can go ahead and grab that meal. So you can see in the corner, bottom left, there are a few resources. The breakfast after the bell service models. This is a great overview of the pros and cons of each model. And so you might be able to better determine which would be a good fit for your school. And then additionally, FRAC and NASSP did a report that looked at best practices from secondary school principals, and they share what works best. So definitely take a look at that. And so now NASSP and FRAC have partnered together to actually put together a secondary school principal's breakfast after the bell toolkit. And this toolkit includes tips for a successful implementation, sample outreach materials, event planning materials, stakeholder surveys, and it has posters that you can put up around your school, a sample PowerPoint that you can give in front of your staff to try to get buy-in. The toolkit isn't quite done. We thought it would be done by now, but it's not. But definitely look out for it. I know NASSP will be promoting it through a blog piece, and it will definitely be up on FRAC's website in the next week or two. So definitely look out for that. And I just want to stress how important strong principal leadership is for establishing a successful Breakfast After the Bell program. Principals, you're the ones really setting the vision for a school, and you're the ones who are going to be able to cultivate staff support. And of course, working in tandem with your school nutrition department. But it really requires a principal being on board and being enthusiastic to get students on board. And that's all I have for you today. But if you have any follow-up questions regarding Breakfast After the Bell or school breakfast in general, definitely take a look at our website, frac.org. You can find numerous resources, and also feel free to just shoot me an email, and we'd love to be in touch. So thank you.
Thank you, Allison. We are going to move on now to our presenter for the afternoon. Leslie Corner is a new mom and assistant principal at Camden High School in Camden, South Carolina. She's the 2016 South Carolina Assistant Principal of the Year and an NASSP National Assistant Principal of the Year finalist. And Leslie, before you begin, I just want to say I'm getting some questions that I'm trying to answer, but the system's not working correctly and not letting me type answers. So we will get to all of the questions at the end of the hour. Leslie, I've handed the controls over to you, so let's see if you can make the slides go forward.
All right, thank you. It is not letting me yet.
All right, let me try again. There we go, it should work now.
I'm going to need to go back. I guess it caught up every time I clicked it before. There we go. Thank you. Good afternoon, and as he said, I am a new mom. I just had my third child, so if I'm a little scatterbrained, I'm still on maternity leave, actually. I thought I'd be back by now, which is why I scheduled today, but he decided he wanted to come a week after his due date, so I'm a week behind. So if you'll just bear with me with that. Today, I'm going to talk about the importance of ninth grade. One of the reasons that I actually went into teaching and wanted to go into education was because of my interest in helping students navigate between middle and high school, because that's such an important part of their education. And I know personally that was an extremely hard time for me. So I try to remember the things that I wish I would have known and that I wish I would have had, and what resources I would have had to be able to be successful in that transition. And I know a lot of this as school principals and assistant principals, you know, but we know in South Carolina, I'm sure this is true everywhere, ninth grade is where the vast majority of students are lost. If you look at the people who do not graduate on time or do not graduate at all, here it says over a third. I would say now at least probably half of our students who do not graduate failed ninth grade, if not more than that. Through my research when I became the ninth grade assistant principal, just finding what I can do to help students be successful and to graduate in 4 years and be ready for college and careers, what I found is that the single most predictive indicator of high school performance is the student's academic standing at the end of ninth grade. So that tells us how important that ninth grade year is, because you can look at where a student is at the end of that year and make a pretty good prediction of whether or not they're going to graduate on time and if they're going to be ready to enter the workforce or go to college when they get out of high school. The third bullet here is something I found interesting, and I actually started running reports after the first month of school to, kind of do my own research on this, because I thought this was an interesting fact, that low attendance during the first 30 days of ninth grade is a stronger indicator that a student will drop out than any other 8th grade predictor. And I just thought that was amazing, because, we look at data so much, and we look at those 8th grade test scores and try to connect with our 8th grade teachers, looking at the students who have failed previously or who have had traumatic events in their life. but for research to show that the attendance the first 30 days of ninth grade is a stronger indicator, that's really powerful. So that's something I definitely do now at the end of September, beginning of October, is run an attendance report just so I can see which students are already slipping in attendance and see if we can figure out what's going on so we can help get them to school, so we can help them be successful. So what I decided to do when I was hired at my current school, the first thing the principal told us, we were pretty much a new administration. There was one assistant principal who remained. My principal was new. He hired me, and he hired one of the other assistant principals. So we were mostly an entirely new administration. So he told us coming in that the first year we were just going to sit back and watch and see what was going on so we could work together to see what we wanted to do to make our school the award-winning school that we knew it could be. And so the first year, I spent a lot of my time in those ninth grade classes and speaking with ninth grade students and doing ninth grade research, meeting with failures at interim in 9 weeks to see what we could do to help them. And the overall beliefs that I came up with from talking to students and looking in those classes is that failure does not motivate an at-risk student. If you have a student who is already at risk of not passing a class or not attending school, giving them zeros or giving them failing grades does not motivate them to do better. And I think that most people see that to be true. Another thing that I looked at looking at the data at my school is if a student fails ninth grade, we've put a huge barrier there for them to finish high school. There's something about that ninth grade year when the student fails it and repeating that year with the upcoming middle schoolers that really creates a barrier for students to getting back on the right track. But lastly, and this is something that was really important to the teachers, when we talked about failure not motivating at-risk students, is that just passing the students so they don't fail a class or they don't fail ninth grade doesn't help them. We have to find a way to help them meet the standards. And as you know, a lot of times in ninth grade, we do get students who aren't ready to complete ninth grade work yet. So what I started looking at with some teacher leaders is what can we do to grab those students who aren't ready to get them where they need to be successful. And so working with those teachers, I used a teacher from every core area, a fine arts teacher, a special education teacher, and then some other teacher leaders, some that were getting admin degrees, some who, just their peers listen to and that the students really respect and that are successful with ninth grade students, especially those at-risk students. Our goals for all our freshmen was that by the end of grade 9, all of them will complete ninth grade successfully and be able to move to 10th grade. And in South Carolina, that's 6 credits with 1 being English and 1 being math, so 4 other. Another thing we wanted is for them to establish connections with adults who will assist and support them throughout high school. When I was speaking with the students, a common denominator for some of the students that were the hardest to reach is that you could just tell they just didn't trust anyone. So to help them find that adult, whoever that may be in the school, that they could trust and work with was really important. How do we get them to connect to that adult that would help them the most to be successful? Another thing we wanted to do, because we wanted to be successful throughout school, when we start pulling some of these safety nets away, we wanted to help them develop study, relationship, and time management skills. A lot of the issues with ninth graders that we saw for students who receive a lot of disciplinary infractions was they had trouble with relationships, whether that was relationships with peers, ending relationships with their boyfriend or girlfriend, or relationships with adults or with parents or bus drivers. We really wanted to help them develop those relationship skills so they can be successful beyond our school. We wanted to develop an understanding that through smart effort they can improve their achievement, and to help them recognize what smart effort is. How do you show smart effort to your teachers? And then with some students who needed some more interventions, we wanted to focus on them completing 4 advanced core classes and 4 elective classes. And unlike our Tier 1 students, which you'll see in a moment, our students who need the least amount of help to navigate that ninth grade year, we actually chose 2 of those electives for them. And I'll talk about them a little bit later, what those electives do to prepare them for high school. So as I said before, we divided all the freshmen into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is all freshmen. If you're a freshman at Camden High School, you take a course called Leadership CHS, and I'll go over some of the details of that in a moment. The important thing about that class is that we did not buy a curriculum. We did not take something that was already built. We used a year of research and teacher leaders in all core areas and a fine arts teacher to develop a course that we felt would benefit all students, our honors and AP students and our self-contained students, that would help them be successful, whatever that success meant for them at Camden High School. So this course really goes along with our school. You know, part of that is what it means to be a bulldog, which is our school mascot. We focus on that a lot. And so we really tailored it to our students and our school. We didn't buy a curriculum for 9th graders. Tier 2 includes that course, plus we looked at students who scored not ready on our standardized test in 8th grade or scored below a 70 in 8th grade in English and our math. And those students take another course that I worked with a group of English teachers who are leaders to form. We used Understanding by Design and Backwards Design to form this class as well. And we focused on every skill that a student needs to be successful in a high school English course. So this is a class they take before English 1 to help them catch up on some of those skills. For the students who needed help in math, we have a Foundations of Algebra Mastery course that I use some teacher leaders that are experts in algebra and 9th grade students to form. And then Tier 3 are our most at risk. That includes everything we do for Tier 1 and Tier 2, and then we had some additional academic support for them. Going back to what Allison was speaking about earlier, one of the things that we did, these are some students I found through my research and interviewing them that did not eat lunch. Some of it was social anxiety. They didn't want to go in the cafeteria. There were too many people in there. Some of it was embarrassment over having free lunch because the students would know based off what you could get. Free lunch students receive the standardized lunch, whereas other students can buy different lunches. Some of it was just they wanted to talk with their friends or do a different activity at that time. So one of the things that we added support for those most at-risk students was a lunch and learn program where they actually received tutoring during their lunch and their lunch was delivered to them. So that took some of that social anxiety away from lunch. And I think just making sure those students ate lunch alone accounted for some of the success that we had with them. Luckily, we ended up making that Lunch and Learn a school-wide program for the first time this year where all of our students go to lunch at the same time. And during that time, all the teachers are in their rooms. They take the first 20 minutes for lunch, and the last 40 minutes are available for student tutoring. That's for all students. Our advanced placement students really are taking advantage of that now with those AP tests coming up. Going back to Tier 1, as a reminder, this is all freshmen, so this even includes our advanced placement and our honors freshmen. This is the course it's required for all freshmen to take, and we use Understanding by Design and Backwards Design and Essential Questions. Within that tier, we included 2 single-gender sections for at-risk freshmen. So there's an all-girl section and an all-boys section for those Tier 3 students that I'll explain who's in that tier later. One of the benefits of that is 1 day a week for those single gender sections, we bring in community leaders. We have a group called Girl Circle that comes in with our females, provides counseling for them, conflict resolution. Also, you know, they get them out in the community. They got some of the girls involved in a community step team. They got some of the girls involved in going out and doing some job shadowing. And with our boys, we're using some mentors from the boys club that's actually across the street that comes in, actually took them into a studio and let them produce a song, and they love that. So those community mentors have really helped with those most at-risk freshmen. Our entire course focuses on what does it mean to be a leader at Camden High School and beyond. So that was kind of our vision for the entire class. And so we broke that down into 4 domains: introduction to the Camden Bulldog family, strategies for success, and that is academic and social. Then we really wanted to have that career and college component in there and make use of our school counselors. So part of that course is South Carolina Pathways and Interest Assessments. And then lastly, we focused on leadership skills. And one of the things that our teachers, when I worked with them to develop this course, were adamant about is that we needed our students to understand that a leader isn't always the loudest person or the person who can speak the best. So we really focused on ways that you can be a quiet leader. And I think that that's made a difference for our students, because I think what they see in society sometimes, whether it's a positive or a negative leader, is the loudest person or the person that has great oratory skills is what they see as leadership. So we talk about ways where even if you're an introvert or you're a quiet person or you're not going to put yourself out there like that, you can still be a leader. Tier 2 were the students I spoke about before who scored not ready and or scored less than 70 in English or math in 8th grade. And for those courses, for those students, we formed that secondary literature course before English 1, as I said before, and we made a Foundations of Algebra course. That's a mastery course to get them ready for Algebra 1, because we found if you do not do well in Algebra 1, you're not going to do well in any high school math course. So we really want to make sure that they get that Foundations of Algebra, even if we take the whole year to get those foundations down. A component that we added on the second year, and it was actually by student request, because they felt we did all this in 9th grade, then here came 10th grade, and other than the relationships they had built, they felt they lost a lot of the academic support. So we added a class in for the 10th graders involved in this program called Secondary Math, and they take that in the fall before they take the second part of algebra in the spring. And once again, this is about our secondary literature class. We have 4 English teachers that teach that class. They work as a group all together, and they also work in pairs, because 2 of those teachers have the Tier 2, and 2 of them have the Tier 3, and they teach single gender courses of English. So I have them working together to make sure that those courses are comparable and to bounce ideas off of each other. And what we focus on in there is to explicitly teach reading and writing strategies to ensure success throughout and beyond high school, and it provides a jump start into the English 1 curriculum. When I was meeting with these teachers, and as I said, we also interviewed students who had failed English 1 and asked them, what could we have done to make a difference? What would have made you be more successful in English 1? What would have made you enjoy English 1? Because a lot of them just said, well, I don't like English. And one of the things that they talked about over and over was what we were reading. So we really focused on having high interest and grade level reading content instead of focusing on these big, long, what we call the classical novels. We did some of those too, but we also had to include some shorter, high interest pieces in there. Also, some intentional teaching of reading, writing, and study strategies that those students were missing. We are a one-to-one school. All of our students have, this year it's an elite tablet. We're researching now to determine if we're going to change for next year, and if we do, what that device will be. But every student in our school does have access to HP Elite tablet, so we can use technology and software applications without creating a financial divide for our students who are more wealthy versus our students who are struggling. And as I said, the students who need the most help are single gendered. A little bit more about our Foundations of Algebra class. As I said, we focus on those basic math interventions. Speaking with the students, a lot of them who were not interested in the Algebra 1 the year before, or who really struggled, said, well, they really didn't see why they needed to know this or how algebra affected their life. So we talked about explicitly teaching how those skills solve real world problems. And interviewing the students coming out of there, that was one of their favorite parts of this course versus some math courses in the past, that they felt the teachers did explain to them where you would use this in life, why this is important. And before we move them on to intermediate algebra, they do master those standards, even if we have to repeat that course. And Tier 3 are our most at-risk freshmen. I've actually started now looking at our rising 9th graders. I meet with the principal at our feeder middle school and also some of the teacher leaders there, guidance counselors, the school psychologists, and I choose about 50 students, 25 male and 25 female, that I think are going to need the most academic help to navigate that 9th grade year. And I formed a team of expert, enthusiastic teachers who really love 9th grade. They like working with students who need more help. And as I said, we get some community mentors to come in and really work with those students. I work with them, and also we have 2 counselors who split 9th grade, and so those school counselors are also involved in this program. So when we take those 50 students, the way that I choose them is we look at repeated disciplinary problems, fail in English and math in the past, miss it over 10 days of school, prior alternative placement, or if they're over age for their grade. And we look at anybody that's 2 or more years over the appropriate age. Those are the students we really want to grab even before they enter 9th grade. And we do have a summer bridge program for these students. So I do meet them in a small group in the summer. So I think that's really beneficial as well. Overall instruction, as a team, we came up with some philosophies. Speaking with the students who were not successful in 9th grade, a lot of them said, well, I just really didn't know what the teacher was looking for. So even if we felt that they should know that, we wanted to make sure that we clearly defined those standards and gave them adequate support. I know the first project that the students do in Leadership CHS, the administration actually comes in and models the project. We allow our principal to do the A model, so that's their first impression of him. Then we have an assistant principal that comes in and does a meet standard model, approximately a C example. And then I come in and do the not acceptable project. And I think that the students, besides thinking it's funny, I think they really enjoy seeing exactly what the teacher's looking for, because they have in their mind before they start, okay, if my project looks like Mr. Matthews, then I deserve an A. If my project looks like this assistant principal, then I follow the directions, but I did an average project. And if mine looks like Miss Corners, then I just didn't do what I needed to do. And so I think that really helps them seeing that at the beginning of a class. We also talk to them about the relevance of curricular content and skills to their future. I think sometimes we're so focused on standards, we forget to explain to the students why these standards are important. So in these groups, we make sure that we do that. We also make sure that the students see us as a team. We've been really careful as adults, even making jokes or our facial expressions or our body language, that the students see all of us are in it together. Even if we don't agree about something that happened or something we're doing, we make sure with the students that we show a united front, because we want them to see that this is important to us, that they're successful. Also, one of the things that we do is we look at each student individually. We meet about every 3rd week of school as a team, and then we also meet as pairs based off the single gender version of the classes you teach. And we talk about each individual student, what they need, and what differentiation we need to do for them to be successful. And I think that really helps, because the students know we're seeing them as individuals. I'll even call them in and say, hey, I noticed when we took Benchmark 1, you were really struggling with this concept. In Benchmark 2, you've made some great progress there. And I also get the guidance counselors to do the same thing with them. And I think that it helps them to see that we actually are looking at these scores. It's not just busy work or something that they're doing just to get a grade. I think that's really important. And we also use high energy active learning. When I was interviewing some of the most at-risk students, one of the words that came up over and over was boring. And so we really had to talk about what boring meant. And as they were giving me examples of what was boring and what wasn't boring, it seemed like they just needed some more energy and activity in their classrooms, especially the core classes. I think our fine arts classes do a great job of that. Our physical education class, our ROTC classes. I think sometimes in our core classes we get bogged down in the standards and we don't use enough of energy and active learning. And so that's one thing that we make sure that we do, especially with these students. These are some celebrations that we had with this program. The first year that we did this, our Freshman Transition single gender male class had the highest English 1 passage rate in the school. So these were the students, the 25 males that I had selected as the ones who needed the most academic help to be successful in high school, and they outscored every other English 1 class. So that was amazing. We were extremely proud of those guys and that teacher for being able to show that success. Overall, our English 1 end of course exams in South Carolina, at the end of English 1, Algebra 1, and U.S. History and Biology, every student in the state takes an exam that's 20% of their final average. And our English 1, after implementing this program, our passage rate went up 12%. So that was a pretty big accomplishment in 1 year. Our failure rate in English 1 went down 11, and in Algebra 1 it went down 12%. We had a 16% decrease in ninth grade failures. We had a 13% decrease in ninth grade discipline, and 8% decrease in repeated out-of-school suspensions, and went down on hearings by 7%. A decrease in validation required. Validation is when a student misses too many days to get credit for a class, and so they basically have to pay money to come and make up those days. The ninth grade students in these courses, the number went down 13% that will require validation in order to receive credit for a class they had passed. And this is my contact information. That is my work email and my Twitter handle. If you want to connect with me on there, I'm always putting up things that we're doing with ninth graders. I did want to kind of go back to something I said earlier about that we had started the Lunch and Learn for the ninth grade at-risk students, and now it's a school-wide program. What has worked well for us with that is, in addition to our cafeteria, we have kiosks throughout the school, sort of like what Allison was talking about earlier, and the students know where those kiosks are. And so instead of everyone having to rush, having 1,000 students coming to the cafeteria at once to get lunch, they can eat any time during that hour in any station. And I'm really excited to look at our data at the end of the year to see how that lunch program has affected our data, not just in ninth grade, but throughout our high school grades.
Thank you, Leslie. I invite Allison to come back in now, and we've got many questions that have come in, and we'll direct them, either one of you answer as appropriate. The first one is, how many schools are using the second chance breakfasts? Is it effective? Allison, can you respond to that?
Oh, you know, I don't have that number directly in front of me, but I think that definitely if you look at that report that FRAC and NASSP did together, where it has secondary principals sharing what works best, I think that might give you a better idea, but we don't have an actual solidified number anywhere. We just, you know, we know that we work with certain school districts to get these programs implemented, and when they do, their breakfast participations generally go up. And then in partnership with that, this type of alternative service model often works best if you are a community eligibility school. And if you want more information on that, definitely check out FRAC's website, and also USDA has a lot of resources on the community eligibility provision. But that provision essentially provides free meals to all students, regardless of individual income, if you have a certain level poverty rate at your school.
Thank you, Allison. Our next question is for Leslie. Is the data that you were citing early in your presentation, Leslie, was that national data or South Carolina data?
That was South Carolina data.
That's what I thought you had said. Okay. And when you say that you spoke to ninth graders, do you follow any specific interview questions to get the data from them?
Depending on the student. So a lot of the students, because they are at-risk students, most of the time when they're going to talk to an assistant principal, it's because they're in trouble. So I really couldn't be as formal with them as I would have been with some of my other students. So some of these were really informal conversations that I would have, you know, just sitting beside them at lunch or seeing them in the hall and asking them to come over for a moment, because as any assistant principal knows, the second you call a student who has struggled in school, especially with discipline, into your office, they're going to shut down. Mm-hmm. So it really was dependent on the student. So a lot of it is the relationships that I had built with the students and just knowing who they were and what the best way to approach them was.
Next question is the pre-English 1 course a year-long course?
It is. We're on a 4x4. We do 4 classes in the fall and 4 in the spring. So they take secondary literature in the fall and they take English 1 in the spring. That way they meet the requirements to get out of ninth grade in South Carolina.
And that really probably answers part 2 of the question, which I should have read to start off with. Can freshman students complete a pre-English 1 and a regular English 1 class during their freshman year?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do these courses count as elective credit?
They, yes, they do, because South Carolina State Department has regulations on what can and can't be a core class. Secondary Lit counts as an elective credit. However, the Foundations of Algebra does count as a math credit. So a student can get Foundations of Algebra and Intermediate Algebra in the same year, so they can actually get out of 9th grade with 2 math credits if they're an at-risk student, which seems kind of backwards. But a student who goes straight into Algebra 1 only has the opportunity to get 1 math credit their freshman year in South Carolina.
Okay. And the next person asks if you could provide the purpose of having single gender classes.
The reason that we did that is when we were doing research on reaching the most at-risk students, that was something that came up over and over again. And at that time, we had a single gender expert at the State Department who came in and did some training with our teachers. We do not do that for all classes. It's just for the math and English, because the research he shared with us showed that the males will do better in English without the females in the room, and the females will do better in math without the males in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided just to single gender those 2 classes. Additionally, it helps us because when we bring in the community mentors, we're able to bring in mentors of the same gender. And what we do with those mentors, we find people in the community that have careers and have experienced things that are reachable for our students. We do have some, for example, professional athletes who have come out of Camden. Now, we bring those people in as well, but we make sure that these community mentors that meet with the students every week are mentors, things that they could see themselves doing after high school. Not that, 1 in a million, professional athlete. So we're really careful who we use as those community mentors. One of the favorites that the females love is a female who struggled in school. It took her 5 years to graduate, and she is a local beautician and owns her own shop. And that's probably one of the ones that connects with the girls the best.
Thank you. The next 2 questions are really procedural questions, which I can answer. The first one is about getting a copy of the PowerPoint, and the second one is a person who had some difficulty with the audio, wants to know if there's a recording available. The answer to both of those questions is that yes, that will be on the NASSP website within 48 hours. You'll be able to go in to see the recorded, or hear the recorded version, and see the PowerPoint there again at that time. Next question is, what statistics did you use to support single gender classes? And I think you've partially answered that. Before you go into anything further, I would like to point out that on the NASSP website, Woodbridge Middle School in Virginia is highlighted as one of the NASSP breakthrough schools, and I believe with the Woodbridge profile there's some links to research about single-sex classes. But can you add to that at all, Leslie?
Basically, sort of like what you just said, when we were doing our research on how to reach those students, as I said before, at that point, we had a person at our State Department that was a huge resource. They actually have cut that position now because of budget cuts, and luckily for students, he's back in the classroom, because I'm sure he was a phenomenal teacher because he was really data-driven and focused on meeting students' needs. We had that support, and just from our research that we did showing the how it affected the English and the math grades and how much progress that they made in a year. You do have to be careful with it, though. One of the things the guy told us is you have to make sure the boys' class doesn't become a sports team and the girls' class doesn't become a sleepover. Mm-hmm. Our first year, we did have to go back and get some more training for our single-gender female teachers, and it may have just been the group of students that we had that year, because we haven't had the issue since then. But there was some mean girl mentality that came up in that classroom, where it was a different girl, every couple of weeks, but it was kind of like one against the group. But we were able, with some more support, get through that, and it was just the first year. That hasn't happened since then. So I don't know if it was just the mix that we had that year or that we needed some more training in that area.
Thank you. Someone's asking, how many ninth graders are in your school?
This year we have almost 300. That is our biggest class.
Okay, and I think you've answered this question, but it's worth repeating. Are the Tier 1 and Tier 2 English Language Arts and Algebra courses year-long or semester courses?
If you're in tier 1, then you're going in either to geometry or semester algebra 1 your ninth grade year. Tier 2 and tier 3, you would have foundations of algebra in the fall and intermediate algebra in the spring. So it would be a year, but you receive 2 math credits.
And you did say that the credits that students get for those early classes is an elective credit, did you not?
Yes.
Okay, and
The
so that's
secondary literature is an elective credit, and the leadership CHS is an elective credit.
and so the next question this person's asking is, who teaches the leadership classes?
We've actually changed it depending on, the student needs. Right now, one of our he coaches baseball and football, and he has a social studies background, is teaching that class. And then our girls basketball coach, who is a female, and our assistant athletic director teaches the single gender female version of the class.
Next question's interesting to me because of what I said about Woodbridge Middle School, where I know they have to have parent permission or parent elect single-sex classes. This person wants to know what the parents' reaction to single-sex classes has been.
That's a good question. That was actually one of my fears, because you do either have to do opt-in or opt-out in South Carolina, and they really prefer the opt-in option. What has helped, the first year I had a lot of parent questions. So what I have done now, and I wish I would have put this on the PowerPoint and actually show an example, but if anybody emails me, I can email you a copy of what we send out. I have the students chosen that we're going to put in the single gender, because remember, that's just 50 students. I send out a brochure to the parents in April. I follow that up with a letter in May, and I actually call those parents in June, and I invite them to come in and speak with me. Most of the parents say, I trust you. If that's what you feel my child needs, I just want them to be successful. They've always struggled in school. I just want them not to get kicked out of school, and I want them to pass. So the majority of those parents, that's what they say. I have, depending on the year, between 5 and 15 who want to come in and talk about it. And I do offer that. I work during the summer. I'm a year-round employee. And so I'll tell them I'll meet them anytime. They want me to come up at 6 o'clock at night, to meet with them after work, because I understand there's obligations. Everybody can't be out of work during the time that I'm at work. So I do schedule appointments outside of my regular work hours to meet with those parents. And this is my 7th year at Camden High School. We've been doing this 6. I've only had one parent after all of that opt out.
Thank you. Thank you. What communications and sharing of information processes have you established with your feeder middle school sites?
That we are very lucky in that aspect. When I told you earlier that we went into the school and the principal was new and he hired 2 assistant principals and there was a standing AP there, he actually is the principal at the middle school now. So we have an extremely good relationship. When he came there, not only did he know obviously what we did at the high school, because he himself was there 5 or 6 years, he and I had a relationship where he knew where I was coming from with ninth grade, and that was my passion. So he's been extremely supportive of what we do. The principal and I do go right before I went on maternity leave, actually 2 days before my son was born. We went to the middle school and met with all the rising ninth grade students, and talk about our expectations and things of that nature. We're also holding a parent university for all the ninth grade parents in April, where we will talk with them about the expectations of ninth grade and what they can do to help their students navigate that. And so those things have really helped us build those relationships. And also, I go with our guidance counselors down to meet with the 8th grade guidance counselors, just so we make sure that we're all on the same page. So I think that that's probably actually one of the positives of the school I'm in, that we do have a middle school that we have a great relationship with, and it's a direct feeder middle school. We only feed, one middle school feeds into us.
Okay, thank you. Must students pass the pre-English class before they take English 1?
No, because if we did not allow them to go in English 1, we would automatically retain them in ninth grade. And due to our research I shared at the beginning that said fail in ninth grade limits a child's chances of graduating, obviously we wouldn't want to have it where after first semester they couldn't go into English 1. So no, we don't. For that reason, we don't do that. But I will tell you this is the 6th year we've had that secondary lit. I've only had one student fail in 6 years.
That's great.
And that student actually just stopped coming to school.
Mm-hmm. The next person's asking if you would talk a little bit about the core the teacher teams that you talked about. She says, how do you utilize teacher leaders from other disciplines besides fine arts and core classes?
Yeah, that's a good question. To start with, when we were building the classes, the secondary literature and the foundations of algebra, I used teachers within those discipline areas. But as we branched out, especially with the leadership CHS, I chose at least one teacher from every department. And additionally, when we had the syllabus done, we did the final exam first, and then we started working on the syllabus. I sent that out school-wide to ask for feedback. At a faculty meeting in the spring, the year before we implemented that course, I presented on that, asked for feedback again, made recommendations, sent it out again. So that course, that Leadership CHS course, was really an entire school class course. Every faculty member in some way was a part of that class. So I think that's one reason that that course has been so successful.
Okay, and I'm going to just keep on going here. The questions, there are quite a few questions. Do you refer ninth grade freshmen to alternative education if they're unsuccessful academically at any time during their freshman year?
Academically unsuccessful, no, usually not, because I really want to hold on to them, and maybe it's just selfish of me, but I think that what we do and what I have in place there and the safety net that we have there, if anybody can help them get through that ninth grade year, I think it's us. If I was going to refer somebody more for alternative, it would probably be more because of a different issue other than academic.
Okay, thank you. How are you tracking the effectiveness of the lunch and learn for students?
As for when we did it just for the at-risk students, we looked at how they increased in classes and things of that nature. Now that we've gone school-wide, so we're talking about 1,000 students, we run the failure report every interim and every 9 weeks, and we also, at every faculty meeting, ask for teacher feedback, and there's things that, as I said, this is our first year doing that. So there are some things for us to look at. Additionally, in it being our first year doing that, South Carolina has gone to a different grading scale this year. I don't know how many people know that, but to make us more like our surrounding states, we went from a 70 being a passing to a 60 and being a 10-point grade scale like colleges. So at this point, it's kind of hard for us to determine if the increase in passage rate is due to one or the other. I believe it's a combination of both. So one thing we do want to look at the end of the year to make sure our data is valid is we're going to run a report of students who made C's and above and compare that to the year before. But I know that our students have enjoyed it and our teachers have enjoyed it. Teachers more so now, they do not have to stay after school. They can leave 30 minutes after students leave instead of remaining after school for tutoring. And it's also really helped our after school programs, because when we had tutoring after school, we couldn't start athletic practices until the students had the opportunity to go. So we created an issue where we had people who didn't need the after school tutorial and didn't have supervision, and we were able to eliminate that issue by having the tutoring during the school day, and also the transportation issue, because sometimes when you do something after school, you've created your own class issue versus the students who have rides versus the students who have to get on the bus. So that, I think that's really benefited all students to be able to have that tutoring during the school day. Hello?
Leslie, did you say that your whole school is on a block schedule?
We're on a 4x4. So we take
Okay.
4 classes in the fall for 90 minutes and 4 in the spring for 90 minutes.
Okay, and someone's asking about the leadership course. Is it offered only one semester or first semester to freshmen, or is it offered both semesters? And if it's only first semester, what does that teacher teach during the second semester?
Okay, that's a good question. We offer it both semesters. I hand schedule the students I believe need it the most into fall. And in the spring, there are students that take that as well in the spring. Usually those students are going to be our students who scored ready in 8th grade and our AP students. But we make sure that our at-risk students get in there in the fall.
The next question is about the leadership content as well. And this person wants to know if you think that content would work in a 12-week trimester format.
I think it would if it was tailored to that particular school. I mean, one of the things that when I talk to other schools, even in our district, about the class, is that, please take what we did and expound upon it, but also make it your own. Because I think the reason that that class is successful, it is because it is how to be a Camden Bulldog. I think it's important that when you have a course like that, you make it for your school, how to be successful at your school.
The next question is one that came up in our last webinar, which was about hour-long lunches and using that time, and that, as you talked about. This person wants to know if the teachers who are available to students at lunchtime are scheduled to be there as an assigned duty. Is it a prep time? Is it volunteer? How does that work?
Okay, that's a good question. This is actually one of the reasons the teachers really like it. They still get their planning, which our teachers get 90 minutes a day planning. They no longer have any duties. We took all their duties away from them. So their duty is to be in their room between 11 and 12. If they choose, they can take the first 20 minutes and close the door and, you know, have their 20 minutes time to eat lunch. We have very few teachers that do that. Most of them just eat their lunch in the room and are available for students the whole hour. But they do have that choice to take 20 minutes. The benefit to them, as I said, is they can leave now after school. They don't have to be there to tutor students, and they no longer have lunch duty.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, and the questions keep coming. But that begs the question: who does the duties that the teachers no longer have to do? Bus duty in the morning and after school, that sort of thing.
We use, all our administrators have duties morning, lunch, and afternoon. And I can tell you, even being pregnant, it was a weight loss plan for us because we walk constantly during that hour. I had to start bringing, I always wear heels because I'm only 5'3" and I work in a high school. So I had to start bringing shoes to be able to navigate through the whole building faster because we're in constant motion. We are blessed with a school resource officer who is phenomenal. So he also helps out with that. Our athletic director. Our PE teachers actually assist with that. They are on a rotating basis where there's always 2 PE teachers in our gym for any student who wants to go in. We are now starting an intramural program for students who do not need the tutoring during school, so that's why we're leaving 2 of our PE teachers in the gym so they can develop that intramural program. And we also use our teaching assistants, so our teaching assistants who are in special education classes, and then we use some of our support staff. We make sure we'll have one support staff cover 2 or 3 phones so another support staff member can help with the duty. But all teachers, other than the PE teachers on a rotating basis, are released from lunch duty.
And the next questioner wants to know about special education students. Where do they fall in the format of the freshman program?
That's a good question. We usually do not place them in the tier 3. Almost all of our 9th grade, especially those resource students, what we call resource when they go out, you know, for the class that helps them with their case manager, a 90-minute class a day.
Right.
Most of those students are going to fall in the tier 2. The first year, our 9th grade special education teacher met with me, chose for her students not to be involved. She came back the next year and said she made a mistake. So we did integrate them into there, and she's become a wonderful resource for us and a huge advocate for the program. She said it's really helped her, you know, meet those students' needs by having them in that tier 2 area. So those students are involved with, especially with that secondary literature course and that foundations algebra course. I think that's been very beneficial to them.
You're hanging in there with these questions. Thank you so much. The next person is asking about the length of the summer bridge program.
For our middle school students coming up, it's 3 weeks from 7:30 to 11:30. And how that's really benefited us is our district is our school is actually the site to provide lunches for anybody in the community who cannot afford them under 18 for free in the summer. So we keep them to 11:30. We serve them lunch, and then our Boys and Girls Club is across the street. So after we make sure that they've had breakfast, the breakfast free, they go to class, they go eat free lunch, they walk across the street and go to the Boys and Girls Club until their parents pick them up after work. So the parents love the program. We actually have parents calling asking if they can come more than trying to get them out of it.
That's great. Now, we have time for one more question, and I'm going to say before I ask this last question, if anyone in the audience has asked a question that I've missed, please email it to Leslie because the appearance of the questions on this grid makes it difficult for me to tell what we've covered and what we haven't. So we don't want you to miss out on getting your answer to your question. She has offered to answer those via email, and her email address is still on the screen. Is there anywhere online that we can preview the freshman leadership course? Is the last question we'll be able to fit in for today.
You know, that's a good question. The teacher should have that syllabus online because, as I said, we are a one-to-one school, so we put almost everything online. So if you go to our school website, Camden High School in Camden, South Carolina, the teacher who's teaching that is Mr. Beckley. But if you would like to see the syllabus, you can email me and I'll email it to you. That's not a problem.
Thank you very much. And someone put in, not a question, but thank you very much for a very informative webinar. It's a comment from someone in the question box here. And I
Oh, I
wanted to,
appreciate that. Like I said, I feel scatterbrained because I've been out of work for 7 weeks and dealing with, and everybody told me I have two girls, a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old, and this one's a boy. And all the women said, you just wait, it's different. You're not going to be able to put him down. And I think they were right.
well, I just want to thank you again, and Allison, I want to reach back and thank you as well for hanging in here with us. Both of the programs we've heard about today are outstanding, and I think they dovetail very nicely. And if you are wondering more about that hour-long lunch and how to get more information, when you go onto the NASSP website, look for the Power Hour webinar, which was done last month, which gives more details about a high school implementing that. And with that, I want to, again, thank the presenters. Remind you folks that you have the opportunity to email them with further questions. Invite all of you to an event that I think is pretty phenomenal. This summer, for the first time, the Elementary Principals Association, NAESP, and the Secondary Principals Association, NASSP, will co-locate for a conference in Philadelphia, July 9 through 11. That's the first time K through 12 principals will be together in that kind of a format. The website to give you more information about it is principalsconference.org. And with that, I'm going to sign off and say thank you very much for being with us. And to our presenters, who I know are still on the line, we had over 250 people on today's webinar, and more than half of them stuck with you the whole time through all the Q&A and everything. So thank you again, and congratulations for doing an excellent job today.